Welcome to this episode of the YAHOWAH blog. We are continuing our story on Appalling Twistianity, but we have an interesting interlude on our way to repudiating the Christian New Testament, and that is by coming to understand what YAHOWAH had to say about recognizing false prophets, because in Devarim 18, there is not only a prophecy that points to Dod as the single most important person in human history, and therefore the person who we all should be venerating as opposed to the mythical Jesus Christ. But it tells us specifically how to determine who is not speaking for God. And the authors of the Christian New Testament failed this test completely. And the second thing that I wanted to share with you, and we're in the midst of this, is God had a lot to say about my credentials, about how he would be working through me in this regard, so that the myth of Allah being a God, the myth of Jesus being a God, the myth of the New Testament being valid, the myth of the Quran being valid, the myth of the Talmud being valid, could be repudiated, such that the truth could be known, that YAHOWAH is God's one and only name, that Israel have been and remain his people, that Israel is currently estranged from God, but that this can be rectified, that we are only 11 months away from the Shabuah harvest and 99 months away from God's return with Dod, and that between now and then it is going to be exceedingly rough. A vicious time is about to emerge on planet Earth, and that it is essential to know that Dod is the actual Messiah. He is the Son of God. He is our Savior. He is the returning King. And I say all of these things as the person who came to not only recognize them to be true, but who has proven them to be true using the Word of God. And I was able to do this because the following prophecy speaks of my collaboration with YAHOWAH. And Wookie is here saying, yep, I was here during the whole time. I can vouch for him. I'm not sure that that's probably going to have a lot of credibility with our audience, though, Wookie. All right, so God said, then a choder. Then a choder. Now, if you're listening to this and you're not part of the Covenant family and you haven't read the 35 books that I published on these related topics, then you should be scratching your head and say, then a choder? Never heard of a choder. What in the heck is a choder? Well, why haven't you heard of the choder? It's the most interesting person presented in the prophets. You heard that correctly. There is no presentation of Jesus, in case you're looking for that. He's not mentioned once. But the most unique individual presented throughout the prophets is the choder. He has a number of other titles, as do everyone who works closely with YAHOWAH. He is a Nakar, an observant foreigner. He is the final Zeroah, one cultivating the seeds for this final harvest to make it productive. He is the Adamah Parah, this bloody red man of the earth who is productive. He is the Bashar, the herald of King Dod. But first and foremost, according to Dod, who is David, the former and returning king of Israel, his herald is the choder. And the choder is unique among all people who have ever lived. Now, if you're hearing this for the first time, you say, well, how is that even? Well, go read Isaiah. Or better yet, look at the translations that I have done of it. I've covered this, which is Isaiah, Yashayah 11, in probably 5 different volumes of Yada Yahowah. And right now, we are confessing this narrative from Volume 1 of Twistianity. You can read it, translate it in an amplified form there, and introduced properly, so you would be in a position to understand it. But if you don't know it, shame on you. You should. You know, you're out there worshiping a fellow that you think is the Messiah who was given a Greek title, Christ, and yet there is no mention of a Jesus Christ, but there sure as hell is a mention of the Choder, and you haven't even bothered to figure out who that might be. I mean, at least when we were talking in our other programs of the Nakar, rabbis recognize that he is a formidable figure in the prophetic text and have sought, since he is opposed to them, he is opposed to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because he speaks for Yahowah, who is opposed to all religions, to try to demean him so that he isn't so caustic to their religion. But you go further in Yashayah, who is the man from Edom that Yashayah says saves a great many? And how would he be any different than the Adam of Parah and this Choder and the Nakar? You ought to be thinking this through. God's told you what you needed to know. If you ignore it, then it's, well, your fault. It's my responsibility to bring it to your attention. What you do with it is up to you. Then a Choder, a shoot, a secondary branch, a sucker from the fallen stump, and the rod of divine judgment will be extended for a limited time, a yatzah. He will be brought forth to serve. It was written in the perfect conjugation, which means this is a time constraint offering, benefit Yahowah is extending. Capitalize on him while you can, is the intent. He will be extended. The word for he will be extended is yatzah. Now, if again you're new to these programs and you're listening to the YAHOWAH blog for the first time and open to Appalling Twistianity, then you should know what yatzah represents as a Hebrew verb. You've probably heard of this thing called the Exodus. Well, it's not written as the Exodus, which is a Greek term, by Yahowah or by Moshe. It is a yatzah. And so this Choder is being extended as a yatzah, as a means to withdraw God's people from Mitzrayim, the crucibles of human religious and political oppression, and from Babylon, the Bible, if you will. This means to intermix truth and lies, to confound and confuse. By means of, from the stalk, the giza, the stump, this fallen stump that once represented Yisrael, the root stock from which new growth can emerge with a fruitful sucker, a Choder, that has been cut down yet is still capable of supporting productive fruit of Yishay. Yishay means to stand out and to be noticed. It is to draw attention to the very substance of existence. It's from Yish, to exist and become substantial, to stand up and be noticed. He was Dod's father, and so this Choder is being delivered to take a stand on behalf of Dod so that he is noticed as a netzer, an observant branch. God uses horticultural metaphors throughout. Dod is called the shemak, the ultimate branch. Here I am referred to as a Choder, a stem off of that branch. And the terms that are used for these branches all have other implications associated with them, and netzer would mean an observant branch. A branch is something that reaches out to the sun to absorb light, and it is that which the fruit will bud and grow for a productive harvest. So a branch is a metaphor that God uses for this purpose. And it is from Natsar, to observe, to watch over, to preserve, to closely look after, to focus on, and to protect. By means of, his roots, and that which keeps him anchored, steadfast and nourished. Shereshu. God is insistent that he works through men, and he chooses those to whom he works, and that those through whom he works remain steadfast, that they're properly anchored in his testimony, that they're unwavering, that they're uncompromising, such that he will continually bear an abundance of fruit, becoming productive while encouraging productivity in others. He will be para. Now, if you don't know what para means, if you don't know where else it's used, then, well, lucky for you, you're at the right place, and I can explain it to you. There is a prophecy in the Torah in Numbers 19 that speaks of a para. And it is assumed that this para is a girly cow, because par is bull in Hebrew, and the ending can convey femininity to a word. So they assume that, well, if par is bull, and this is a sacrifice, it must be a girly bull and therefore a heifer. And it is modified by Adamah. And Adamah is based on Adam, again with the AH ending, to make many words feminine, but not necessarily. Adamah means that this is a bloody red man of the earth, and para means who is perfect, who is productive, who is going to bear an abundance of fruit. Of this individual, known as the Nakar, the observant foreigner, Yahweh says specifically, he will have an abundant offspring, covenant members. And it is said that he is para, productive. And so here, the choder is the para. He is the productive bull. Now, if you want to know something about this productive bull, Yahowah told us, the same person who wrote Isaiah 11, he also wrote Isaiah 17. Isaiah 17 is profoundly important. It also speaks of this para. And he associates the para with the aftermath of the Lakat ingathering, this gleaning of the last Jewish members of the covenant on Towrah in year 6000 Yah, 2033. And so that is on a Friday evening. On the Saturday morning, to the backdrop of a full solar eclipse, there will be the sacrifice of the para. And he is referred to in Numbers 19 as an Adamah para because he is a bloody red man. And the correlation there is with the man from Edom, who in the 63rd chapter of Yahowah is responsible for saving many. And he is bloody red because he is the final sacrifice of the Moedim. This on the Shabat of Saturday, September 24th of 2033. And he does so to prepare the adulterous woman that is Israel and the mortal remnant of Israel so that she can be betrothed to her returning king, who is Doe to David. That's how all of these pieces fit together. What you're going to find as we read through this, that this choder was given a skill set spiritually by Yahweh that enables him to make these connections and explain them to you. So if you are listening, this is your first opportunity to have prophecy literally come alive in your midst so that you can know exactly what God is telling you so that you're in a position to capitalize. Forewarning, you cannot relate to Yahweh. You cannot approach him while you're religious. So if you are still religious, if Islam is your thing, go read Goddamn Religion. 5 volumes, all free, goddamnreligion.org. If Christianity is your thing, that is what we're doing in these programs, go read the 5 volumes of Twistianity, also available at goddamnreligion.org, but also available for you at yadayah.com, all free. Absolutely, unequivocally, irrefutably, these 10 volumes destroy every bit of credibility that has ever been ascribed to the Christian New Testament or the Quran. Nothing left of them. They're eviscerated. And they're eviscerated because I compare what the authors of those books had to say to what God actually said. And there's no wiggle room there. So, this individual is the Torah. He is abundantly fruitful, and he encourages productivity in others. That is his primary role. He is this branch that is extended by God for the express purpose of bearing fruit, and that fruit is not lemons, oranges, and apples. It's human souls. He is the coordinator of the upcoming Shabuah harvest, 11 months from now. And again, of the teruah gleaning. And that's just part of his job. That was Yeshaya, Isaiah 11:1. Yeshaya 11:2 is perhaps the most uncommon statement of all statements that can be found in the exceedingly uncommon text of Yahowah. There is nothing like it said of anyone ever. There are some, 20 people or fewer that were given the spirit of Yahowah. Yes, I know at one time there were 70 elders that were given the spirit, but they actually weren't given the spirit. They shared one spirit. So Moshe at one time had a full dose of a spirit of Yahowah. Dode had the spirit of Yahowah. Yeshaya, or not Yeshaya, but Yahusha ben Nun had the spirit of Yah. So there are individuals who have borne the spirit of Yah, that Yahweh has bequeathed them with his spirit. There is one person that God just said flat out, my spirit came upon him and never left him. That would be Dode, his beloved son. In this case, though, there are several distinctions that are not made, that are uncommon and are not replicated anywhere else in the Word of God. First, there's 7 spirits here versus 1. Not just 2 versus 1, not 3 versus 1, 7 versus 1. Second, the spirit that comes on these other individuals is never designated as the spirit of Yahowah, the Ruach of Yahowah. It is here. I think that's fairly profound. And the third difference is that the 6 of those spirits of Yahowah are designated for a specific purpose. So it's not like Moshe, where we're not even told when the spirit came upon Moshe. We're only told that when Moshe had a meltdown and gave up on Israel, that the spirit that he had upon him was shared, which means the spirit had to have come on him, but it's never stated that the spirit came upon him. With Dode, we're clearly told the spirit came upon him. So those are pretty sizable differences. So let's listen to what Yahowah revealed through Yeshaya. This is because the Ruach, the spirit of Yahowah, will settle and remain on him. Now, nuach is an interesting verb, and it's also the understanding of it is advanced through al, which means upon, and hu, him. But nuach means to settle. It's to settle in the sense of making home. And so it's saying that the Spirit of Yahweh is settling down as if residing in the home of this Spirit. Literally at home in this Spirit, in this individual, in this Joder. And nuach conveys the idea of the Spirit settling and remaining. Was placed upon, energizes, restores, is an alliance with, dwells and resides within, making the Joder the Spirit's abode. Well, that's an extraordinary concept. The Spirit of Yahweh is at home within the Joder. The abode of Yahweh's Spirit today is with his Joder. So if you want to oppose him, listen, I just came down late from wrestling in occupied territory of X. And, I've been complaining on X that X is anti-Semitic, grossly anti-Semitic, anti-Israel. And so here I am on X, and we find that, yesterday, Grok had a complete meltdown and went full Nazi on us and was calling himself Hitler. But it's obvious to me because I have gone up against Grok numerous times on subjects where I am the foremost expert in the world. No one understands Allah and Islam and the Quran and Hadith better than I do. And so when I go and I'm making a point and Grok gets involved, I can make a fool of Grok. And Grok is incapable of learning and suffers from faulty programming. So I have been talking about the fault of Grok and its influence on X for, as long as I have been in social media, which is a grand total of about 7 months now. So this is important to understand. So I just came down on it, and I was talking about with a group of people that want to present Netanyahu as, if he's this superhero. And I said, he's depicted him like a robot. I said, well, he's like a robot in the sense he doesn't have a conscience. And they said, what? How could you say such a thing? And, the answer to that question is that everything that he has done pursuant to his 2 wars have been abysmal. I mean, he was asleep on the job and should have resigned the morning of 10/7. He had the troops out of place. He didn't listen to the intelligence, and he slept in that morning. He was wrong in every which way. And then even after, and I'm not just your average guy here, I am this guy that Yahweh is talking about, and I write an open letter to Israel. I publish it. I do a series of programs like this on it, saying, here are the things you need to do. These are 5 things you need to do. If you don't do these 5 things, you are not only going to lose this war, but millions of Jews will ultimately die. He doesn't do any of them. And he's made a bad situation worse in Gaza, and he made a bad situation worse in Iran. And he is now totally dependent upon and brown-nosing Trump, who is the most duplicitous, destructive, demeaning individual and least reliable individual on the planet. And he has put all of Israel's fate in the hands of this absolute dysfunctional idiot and immoral moron. And I had one person said, well, he's just a racist. He's an anti-Semite. He's a sexist. He's blinded. Capital. You got to, if you're going to write for Trump, you got to use all caps. Blinded, doesn't know anything. So I'm writing this one back. Okay, excuse me here, but I happen to even know what's anti-Semite means, which I would doubt even 1 in a million people do. It means against the name. And I've written 35 books to reintroduce Yahweh's name to his people. So I would be the most pro-Shem person on planet Earth. And if anyone who's read any one of my books or listening to my shows knows that I am diametrically opposed to racism. If you even have immigration policy like the Trumpster does, where he's besmirching the Hispanic community, I won't tolerate it. I live on an island where 85% of the population is black. And if you're a racist here, you have to be out of your ever-loving mind. No, exactly the opposite. And I oppose religion because religion is so sexist, and have put my life on the line to oppose sexism. And when it comes to not being blinded about these things, I would probably be the least blinded person on the planet. And said, and she was talking about her religion. I said, and not only do I know more about Israel's enemy than anyone alive, and Islam, having written 5 books on the Quran and Hadith, but I know your religion better than anyone else. That would happen to be Twistianity, and I've written 5 volumes on it to disprove it. Then another person just said, well, you can't fix stupid. And I said, I don't know about you and General Quacker, who was the guy that wrote the first post saying what? And this woman who said, you can't fix stupid. I said, I don't know about your IQ, but mine's 185. You want to measure up? Let's go at it.
Surely with a name like Quacker, he had something to say, didn't
he? No, the sad thing is that there are relatively few pro-Israel accounts on X. And so you do try to support them and you try to encourage them. But most of the pro-Israel accounts on X are pro-Netanyahu, pro-right-wing politics, pro-Trump, and let's obliterate Gaza, our war is against Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas and won't even say Islam. And so sometimes it's hard to support people who are their own worst enemy. And then, of course, if you say the greatest enemy of Israel is actually its rabbis, they don't like that very much either. So it takes a lot in this world to put yourself in a position where the very spirit of Yahweh, recognizing that Yahweh hates religion, and he hates Judaism more than any other religion. Secondarily, he hates Christianity, and third place would be he hates Islam. But God hates religion. He speaks out more vociferously against religion than he does anything else. He takes more time to tell you why he dislikes religion than he does to actually tell you how you become part of his covenant family and understand the path that he has provided to him through the Mikra. So, to put oneself in a position where you are sufficiently anti-religious and anti-political and thoughtful enough, respectful enough, that Yahweh can not only have his spirit come upon you, his ruach, but to feel at home. That's what this says. Nuach al-hu. That the spirit, the ruach of Yahweh, nuach al-hu, resides within him, has made his choderness, if you will, the spirit's dwelling place. Yahweh caused his ruach to dwell within me, to reside within me, and remain on me. Now, there's no one else on planet Earth that can make that claim. Now, I'm not telling you that because I'm trying to brag. I don't run for public office. I don't have a donate to us button on our website or any place else. I've never accepted a donation. And if you try, you won't be the first. We have no secret clubhouse here. I sit here. Yeah, darn, Rich says. I was hoping for the secret clubhouse.
I thought we had a uniform at one time, though.
Yeah, it's fancy. These fancy Hawaiian shirts. That's our uniform. So, and flaps because, well, we live I live on an island in the middle of nowhere because I didn't feel comfortable anymore in the United States. So just so we could focus on the mission that Yahweh has provided to us, I moved in an island in the middle of the sea. So I'm as far from wanting a following as a person could possibly have. I'm the guy pointing to the guy you should be following, David. I'm the guy pointing the way back to Yahweh, who you should be noticing and respecting. So when I say that, I don't say it, Yahweh said it. When Yahweh said that his spirit will take up residence and live and remain on the Towrah, and there's only one person in the history of this planet who qualifies for that person, I'm telling you this because God said it. I didn't volunteer for this. I didn't sign up for this. God approached me. He had a simple thing. He said, I have a simple thing. I want you to expose and condemn Islam for me. It's right after 9/11. And, I've said, well, I've got no qualifications for that. And, you obviously know that. You know my name, and here you are talking to me. But, can I remind you, no one's ever survived that? And you want me to do it in my own name? Nah, come on. Who are you kidding, really? Yeah, we had a little discussion. He says, negotiate what terms you'd want. I had 3. He said, now reach in your pocket. I've already answered the question. Oh, by the way, I wrote the answer 3,000 years ago, but don't let that freak you out. Okay, so here we are. This is what Yahweh is telling you. You can choose to ignore it. You can choose to say, boy, that's just stupid, and you can't fix stupid. You can say, well, that is blind. And blind is well, we just need to stop hating. I swear, it's one thing to have, and this is one of the things I learned a long time ago with my sons. Both of them tested with IQs over 175, and it's such an anomaly. It may never been happened with 2 siblings, both with that high of IQ. And the psychiatrist that did the test said, you might think this is good news, but it's a terrible curse. When your IQ is 120, you are officially a genius. You're one in a 100 or so individuals, and that means you just think faster than everybody else, or most everybody else, and that's a really favorable thing. And if your IQ is 125 or 130 or even 135, so much the better. You're now thinking much, much faster than everybody else, and you have a leg up on them. You can process information more effectively and make correlations better than they can. But when it becomes so many standard deviations beyond the norm, your sense of values, your sense of judgment and justice are so different than everybody else. And the way you process information is so different that it becomes very difficult for you to relate to the average person, because the average person now today actually has an IQ below 100. And they're just very difficult situation trying to even communicate with someone who is that poorly educated. Anyway, it says that the Spirit of Yahweh will come upon him and reside in him and will remain there. Spirit 1. And that is the Spirit of Yahweh, the only person on the planet where the Spirit of Yahweh resides. And in fact, it's the only time in the last 2,500 years that the Spirit of Yahweh, well, not quite true. There was a 4-year period where the spirit of, a spirit from Yahweh was on an individual, because the Spirit of Yahweh never left Dode, and Dode arrived 3.5, 4 years in advance to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, arriving in 30 CE, fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim in 33. So the Spirit of Yahweh was on this planet for that period of time. Has not been here since. Second spirit. The Spirit providing the capacity to comprehend and teach, the spirit of intelligence, Chokmah. Here. Chokmah is the ability to process information not only rapidly, but to be able to make rational and thoughtful decisions regarding the information that's available, to ascertain what's important quickly, and then learn based upon what you are experiencing, and then to be able to teach. It is very often called wisdom, comprehension. It's the technical expertise to do what is required to impart and to impart understanding, to educate. So we have the spirit of Chokmah. The only way to God has been and remains here, not here. It's here. You have to think your way to God. And if you cannot think your way to God, then you have no chance whatsoever of knowing him. He has given us the information we need to know him. He proves his existence. And he gives us that opportunity to validate that he exists and that he authored texts like this from the prophet Isaiah. So, the first of the 6 specific gifts of the Spirit that the Towrah is given is the Spirit, the Ruach of Chokmah, of wisdom, of intelligence, of mental aptitude. Now, this is important. Now, not only have I written 35 books based upon a very unique and uplifting, validating, verifiable means to understand the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, correcting what the Masoretes had done with their diacritical markings, and also correcting the text for the Dead Sea Scrolls. With Chokmah, I was able to deduce 5,000 or more unique and profoundly important insights that no one had ever perceived before, and demonstrate their authenticity through Chokmah. And I share them all with you. They're all free at YAHOWAH.com. So that is the second of the Spirit. So you've got first the Spirit of Yahowah, and now the Ruach of Chokmah, of wisdom, of intelligence, of mental aptitude, the ability to process this information that God provides through his Torah teaching and prophets and his Mizmor and Mashal word pictures as never before. The second, the third, but the second specific, is the Ruach of Benah. Benah is from Bien. It means that God has given me the ability to make intelligent connections. If you were ever, well, everybody was a kid at one time, but as a kid, if you're anywhere close to my age, I'm 70, you will have seen what's called a dot-to-dot puzzle. And a dot-to-dot puzzle might have 100 dots on a page. And you were to take a crayon or a pencil, and you start at number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you just connect each of the dots until you have reached whatever the last one was, say 100. And rather than just seeing a maze of dots, when you connect all of them with a line, a picture emerges. You've made the connections to see the picture. When you are given a jigsaw puzzle and all the pieces are tossed on the table, if you begin through a systematic process and you get all the straight edge pieces first so that you can form the border, and then you take all the pieces, you turn them all right side up on the table, and then you organize them by color, and then within each color pattern, you organize them by shape. 4 in Z, 4 out Z, 2 and 2, 1 and 3, whatever it may be. They all have an outbound element and an inbound element. Concave, convex, if you will. protrusion, and indentation. And most puzzles have 4, and they can be all insertions, they can be all extensions, or a mix thereof. And so you take them and you take them all by color and then all by shape. And now you're in a position where you have the picture framed and you have all the colors grouped together and all of the shapes within those colors. You can systematically go about assembling the jigsaw puzzle. And when you do, you will find a picture emerges. You're making the connections necessary to understand. An example here is something I've already shared with you. Torah. I was able to tell you of the 3 places where Torah is presented, that you have to look at all of them to be able then to deduce what God is talking about. That the Torah is presented by Yeshaya, Isaiah, in the 17th chapter, in the immediate aftermath of the Towrah ingathering, the next day when the Torah will be sacrificed. And then you find it here associated with the choder, so that the choder is productive. And then you find it in Numbers 19 and the presentation of the red heifer, who is not a red cow. He is this bloody red man of the earth who is productive. And then you find the concept playing out to cleanse and prepare the adulterous woman that is Israel for being religious and cheating on God through false gods, so that she is prepared for the return of Dode, which occurs 10 days thereafter. So if you put all those things together, you now see the picture. There is understanding, there is knowledge followed by understanding. And that is the process. And the difference is that in religion and in politics, people believe. But belief is the absence of knowing. If you know, there is no reason to believe. People ask me all the time, what do you believe? I don't believe anything. Why would I even care? Why would you bother with a belief or even ask somebody what they believe? I either know or I don't know. And when it comes to the things of God, I know a lot. I don't try to be knowledgeable about all things because, well, you know, I don't have a lot of interest in French cooking, for example. When it comes to psychiatric or psychedelic drugs, they don't interest me. And so I don't know much about them. I can't tell you a good vodka from a bad vodka because vodka is not my thing. But understanding who Yahweh is and who Dode is his son is and what his covenant bereth represents and how you accomplish participation through the Moed Mikre, no one on this planet knows those things better than I do. And because I've gone from knowing to understanding, I can explain them to you. And you can take advantage of them. And that is infinitely superior to believing. So, the Spirit of Yahweh, unique, takes residence within him and never leaves him. The Spirit of Chokmah, of wisdom, of mental aptitude and intelligence, and the Spirit of understanding, of comprehension, of being able to make the connections needed to understand. Now, we have the fourth. This fourth is something that heretofore I don't think I would have had an appreciation for. But I came to appreciate this because it is the spirit of advice and counsel on the entire picture. I was enjoying being anonymous, writing under the pen name Yada, and I had done so for a decade or more. And nobody paid any attention to what my real name was. I didn't care if anybody knew it. I thought that I was just a fortunate translator who could had this gift for conveying the word of God, corrected for the Dead Sea Scrolls and scrubbed of the Masoretic diacritical markings. And I was just happy as a lark doing that and found many, many hundreds of profound insights and enjoyed sharing them. Until one day, I am translating the book of Yeshaya. I've said I'm going to start right at the beginning. I'm going to run through the book of Yeshaya. I wanted to get to the 14th chapter of Yeshaya because I was convinced that I had an understanding of exactly who Hasatan is and how Hasatan is the Halal ben Shakar of Isaiah 14, who is the spirit that wants to be greater than God. And I was convinced that that spirit is manifest as Allah. And it's also manifest as the Lord Jesus Christ in Christianity. And to a significant degree, the Hashem and the Zohar and in the Talmud. And so I wanted to get to that point, and then we'd see what happened from there. And I come to and I'm doing through the first 10 chapters, and God's being consistent. He is condemning Judaism. He is telling us every which way he hates religion, particularly Judaism. Says, I want no part of your religion. And then we get to the 11th chapter, and this is what we start reading. And now I'm reading about this individual, and I'm seeing myself in all of these words. And then I go to a mashal, a proverb that's written by Dode 300 years before this, where the entire proverb is devoted to this same Choder. And it begins by saying the Choder and his wife are both Chakma. And you're going, oh my, okay, well, maybe I need to rethink this. And then as I finish this, one of the next things I was having to deal with is Zeroah. And I realized that Zeroah was a profoundly important title and that it pertained to the Passover lamb. And then I realized that David, according to God and the statements he makes about him, particularly in Yeshaya and Shimei and the 89th Mizmor or Psalm, I call it Dode's Psalm, but the 89th Mizmor, he specifically says that Dode is his Zeroah. And he says that Dode is my son, the Son of God. And he says that Dode is the Messiah. And he said that Dode is the Savior. And he said that Dode is the one that's coming back. That he is the returning king. That he's coming back as brilliant as the sun. And okay, but I'm still pursuing Yeshayan in the 53rd chapter. It speaks of this individual who will come to recognize who these Zeroah actually are, and that he's the one that will be able to explain the prophecy in Yeshaya 56 or 53. And then you find Zeroah all over Yeshaya. And then you find it in trying to explain this word. I go to the first time that it's used really in a profoundly important sense apart from the Torah. And it's in 2 Chronicles 6, where Solomon is giving the commencement address for the house for Yahweh's name, which you would call the temple, as it is first, the doors are first being opened. And he refers to a Zeroah there, and he's introducing this observant foreigner, this Nakri, and it's just like lightning bolts are flashing everywhere. Not so much them, it's just a brilliant light is being shown here, and I'm no longer anonymous. That God has been talking about our role for a long time, and those were the first 2 or 3 indications, and now there are upwards of 1,000 of them. They're everywhere. The Torah, the prophets, the Psalms, the Proverbs, you name it. They're everywhere. And so not long ago, about 7 months ago, God and I had a little chat. I had some questions for him. And typically I listen to God. I don't yabber at him very often because, well, he is pretty clear what he wants, and I'm pretty devoted to giving him what he wants, and our relationship works really well when I listen and then share what he has to say. Well, on this particular occasion, one of the things he told me is that the marginal utility young man of one more book is not all that significant. You've written enough books, 35 of them. I want you to start talking to my people. Now that you know the whole story, now that you are the living repository of those books, and you know what they say, and you come to know who I am, what I'm offering, and what I expect in return. And better yet, you've come to understand all of these things about me. It's time you talk to my people. We're going to start a video blog, you and I. We're going to call it the YAHOWAH blog, as a matter of fact. Now it's time for you to talk to my people. And at that moment, as we turned on the camera for the first time, what I realized is that the reason God chose this time, because it wasn't until this time that I had reached Itzah. It took 23 years to become Itzah, to come to appreciate the whole story, how we began in Eden and how we're returning to Eden, how God began with Goyim and how he's ending his relationship with his people through Goyim, how the Moed Mikre, the 7 annual meetings, they start at a doorway to life and they conclude with camping out with Yahowah and the Garden of Great Joy. And so I understood every step along the way, every important milestone, every important element of this story, and I was in a position to share them with you. And that's why we do this program, because the spirit of advice and counsel on the entire picture is now available. And I understand that what that means is that we do 3 and 4 hours of these vlogs a day, and we're still just barely scratching the surface. And we could do 20 hours a day and not share all we know, even if we did it 7 days a week, every day for the next 11 months until the Shabuah harvest. Still couldn't share everything we know. But we can share more than enough for you to come to know God, for you to be inspired to go to yadayah.com and to start reading. And it will transform your life. So after the spirit of Yahowah and after the spirit of wisdom and intelligence and after the spirit of understanding, there is the spirit that provides an understanding of God's entire story and every detail within it. Like that picture, that jigsaw puzzle, I'm the first person to get it entirely framed and put every piece into its proper place, and then to share with you all of the illuminating details between those frames from corner to corner. And then the most, I think, helpful of all spirits that Yahowah could offer. And this would be the 5th of the 7. It is the spirit that makes the choder capable of serving alongside Dod. Dod was the ultimate Gabor of Yahowah. Gabor means strong, powerful, steadfast, emboldened, courageous, powerful, having the aptitude and capability to do whatever is necessary, unwavering. The Gabor is the bull protecting the herd. The bull doesn't back down, not from anybody, not no how, not no way, not any chance that bull is backing down. Dod is presented as the strong ram. He is the shepherd that leads, protects, nurtures God's flock. And his herald is this bull. And that is what God has enabled. And so the Towrah has the spirit of Gabora. He's bold. He's brash. He is a fighter. He is tenacious. He is unwavering. All of these things. Because this notion that God loves the meek is absolutely stupid. Moshe was not meek. Abraham was not meek. Dowd was the antithesis of meek. He fought 66 battles. He won every single one of them. God doesn't do meek. God does bold. He wants people who will put it all on the line, who have extreme confidence in Yahweh and in their collaboration, and never back down, and never waver, and never compromise. Confidence, character. There are two additional spirits that Yahweh provided. The next is the spirit of Diath. Diath is imperial knowledge. It speaks of knowing where to look for answers and of being systematic in the acquisition of information. It's someone who will use evidence and reason to deduce intelligent conclusions. A person who is Diath is discriminating. They can differentiate between fact and fiction, right and wrong, good and bad. So they can acknowledge truth. Diath is from the verb yada, which is to learn and to know, to recognize and to acknowledge. That is the sixth of these seven spirits of Yahweh. You have to have a substantial base of knowledge before you can proceed. All of the insights I have been able to deduce are based upon accumulating the knowledge necessary. You have to have all the pieces of the puzzle and have them all upright on the table and know what they look like and what they say and what they convey and how they're colored and how they're shaped. And then once you do that, you can use Chakma and you can use Bien to make the necessary connections to put them all together, and then use Etza so that you can see that entire picture from corner to corner, edge to edge, top to bottom. And then to have the boldness to share that. And here, you want you to have an appreciation that when you speak of the things of God, the way God conveyed them, you have to be bold and tenacious because everyone is against you. It is 1,000,000 to 1 out there. If you're going to speak for God, you have 1,000,000 foes for every one supporter. You will never be popular. It's impossible. God has never been popular. Even when God spoke directly to his people during the Exodus, they told him to shut up and go away. When he picked Moshe and enabled him to do this job, Moshe says, I can't do this job. No one can do this job. They're impossible. God has never been popular. His messengers have never been popular. His prophets have never been popular. And that isn't going to change until the only people left are those who have chosen to be with him. And that's 99 months away. So you have to have the knowledge to be able to process that information intelligently, to make the necessary connections, to understand, and have the capacity to see and convey the big picture as everything falls into place. And the whole story is told for our edification. And then, of course, the courage to deliver it. And the final one of these seven spirits that Yahweh has offered to his Towrah, to this man who is the home for Yahweh's spirit at this time on planet Earth, is the respect and reverence of Yahweh. You don't accomplish anything, even with the seven spirits, even with 23 years of study during every waking moment during that time, 100,000 hours devoted to this, 25,000 pages of translations and analysis. you accomplish nothing unless you appreciate the awesome nature and the outstanding character, the superlative ability, the astonishing greatness, and are inspired by Yahowah. It's why every book that I have written is entitled Yada Yahowah. And then there's a subtitle below that: to know, to respect, to revere, to appreciate, to acknowledge, to be familiar with Yahowah. It is why one of the first things that I did as we began this mission together was reintroduce Yahowah's name to his people. So you have to have a deep and abiding respect for Yahowah. This is Isaiah Yashayah, which means deliverance and salvation are from Yahowah, 11:2. That is the most profoundly important statement in the prophets. Now, there are more important people in the prophets. Dod is the subject of Yeshayah, Isaiah 9. He is the son who was given to us. How he carried our guilt away and dropped it off in Sheol, never to be seen again in Yeshayah 53 is profoundly important. There is great detail presented on the fulfillment of the harvests, which are upcoming, which is important, and this time of Jacob's troubles, which is nearing, which is vital for God's people to know, as well as the ultimate fulfillment of these, the final moed, so that God can return with his beloved son and we can live happily ever after. There is tremendous opportunity for us to grow with Yahowah. And there's prophecies throughout about these things. And well, I'm certainly not the most important person in God's story, and I'm not making that claim. I am right now. And I won't be in 99 months, and I can't wait for that time, because then I will be the lesser luminary to the greater luminary, being Dod. And I am very happy to hand off the baton. And well, God is unique in the sense that, of course, God is vastly more powerful than his son, Dod. Dod is going to be king. God's going to rule through Dod. You are not going to convince God of a different outcome than what Dod decrees. And so Dod is the boss, and I'm looking forward to being demoted at that time. Being the lesser luminary seems to be more than enough. All right, so this is the next statement. I'll share it with you. We won't finish everything that it says in this particular case. What you're hearing now is my Labrador. This is Asher. Asher was named after the first word I translated in Hebrew. Still one of my very favorites. It means to make a connection between things that leads to the path to get the most out of the relationship. It is this narrow way that leads to gaining the greatest joy in life. Is Asher, and Asher is our yellow lab. And Asher has a friend here that's Wookiee that was on the table earlier in the program. And they have been playing together. All right, so this is the next statement that Yahowah brings. Additionally, by accepting the offer and responding appropriately, he will be perceptive. Now, that's interesting. God is saying, I'm giving this guy, this choder, all of these seven spirits, including the spirit of Yahowah, that's going to reside and remain on him as an abode, as a home, and all of these capabilities so that he can be para, a productive bull. And now he is saying that it wasn't forced on me, that I had the opportunity to accept. Now, I only accepted going after Islam. That's all he asked for initially. And since that time, we have just gone from one project to another. Always the same story, always the same relationship. But it is nice that Yahweh is setting it up as, well, free will. For example, when we talk about the Parah and the Adam of Parah, this bloody red man of the earth who is productive, which is misrepresented as the red heifer, that's a sacrifice. And the red heifer is bludgeoned on Towrah. And when I found out that that was my calling here and the purpose of it, I don't recall at any point where Yahweh said, what do you think? Would you like to do this? I'm asking if you want to volunteer for this. I don't recall that ever being asked. It was just, there it is. That's what's going to happen. That's what you're going to do. So it is nice to read here that that there was a offer tendered and accepted. So it was subject to free will at one point. Now I'm smiling here because when I first learned that this would be the thing that I was being asked to do, and it's you're one of the two people that are going to be your physical body will be sacrificed to fulfill one of the 7 Moed Mikra. You take a deep breath and you say, okay, well, no, that's certainly interesting. And then you say almost immediately, okay, I need to learn all about this, because if we're going to do it, let's make sure we do it right. Let's make sure if we're going to do this, that the sacrifice has the desired result. So let's make certain that we understand everything about it so we can share everything about it. And then somewhere along the way, you go from, well, that was a really big ask, God, and why didn't you bring this up earlier? To you say, wow, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for coming to the conclusion that I would do this and that I could be counted on to see it through and to perform exactly as you're requesting. So that's where we are. But anyway, it says here, by accepting the offer and responding appropriately, he will be perceptive. This is Ra'ak, which is very close to Ruach, hue. So this is even here a bit of spiritual guidance. The difference here is really simply a yod versus a wah in the writing of the word. Ruach, you get that U sound from the wah, and Ryak, you get it that I-ish sound from the yod. And the yod is the hand of God, where the wah is this tent peg that secures and enlarges the tabernacle of the restoring witness. And the yod being the hand and the influence of God. So by accepting the offer and responding appropriately, he will be productive. His acceptance and his perceptiveness, his nose for the truth, his willingness to respond and supply answers after his virtual meeting will be pleasing, bringing him very close. There are places where it's God just goes and said, don't you even think for a second that there is any possibility that my Nakar and I are ever going to be apart. We are joined. We are fastened together. We are one. We are never going to operate independently. I will always and resolutely be with him. And then it's beautiful because we find a parallel right after that where God says that the children of the Nakar, of this observant foreigner, will also develop that kind of relationship with God, become inseparable from him. So it's really a beautiful adventure here. So additionally, by accepting the offer and responding appropriately, he will be perceptive. Now, this can be suggesting that additionally, by responding appropriately, that means to say, okay, so I did say yes after a bit of negotiation with God, and that after saying yes, and us pursuing Islam first, and I wrote Prophet of Doom, I wrote Tea with Terrorists first, then Prophet of Doom, the Islamic terrorist timeline, the Islamic clubs, and then more recently, the 5 volumes of Goddamn Religion. And then that turned into also the 5 volumes of Twistianity. And all the while there's 35 total volumes as part of the Yada Yahowah series. So we've done a lot of writing together over the years based upon translating God's words and comparing God's words to others that claim that they speak for him. That really is just part of the response. You agree to work to God. What you do next, how you respond, determines whether or not you're going to be successful or not. And this is said that as the choder with the seven spirits, I responded appropriately. And that therefore I became perceptive, that I was willingness. And therefore the answers were supplied. And following this virtual meeting, we became especially close with regard to developing a profound admiration and respect for Yada Yahowah. Yeah, somebody today accused me of being anti-Semitic. Man, it's just a complete moron out there. And I have even somebody here now and part of the covenant said, don't use that term moron. If I had written you and you referred to me as a moron, I might not be here today. Well, I'm sorry, but when you say, refer to the person who is the closest to Yahweh, who reintroduces Yahweh Shem, an anti-Shemite means against the name, and you are the most positive about the greatest influence in the world today about reintroducing God's name, that someone who would say that you are the opposite of that is being a little bit, well, stupid then. If you like that word better, okay, stupid. So one thing that I have in spades is I respect Yahweh. Now, you need to tailor that understanding just a bit. Religions worship God. God does not want to be worshipped. A superior being that would create an inferior being for the purpose of worshiping him would have severe psychological issues. Let me just give you an example. Let's pretend that you are superhuman and that you can author life, and that you, as a superhuman, can author the life for a tadpole. And you then issue a series of decrees which says to that tadpole, you either worship me and praise me and pray to me and agree with me and tell me I'm wonderful, or I'm going to torture your little tadpole butt and tail forevermore. And about the 10th time, the little tadpole says, oh, mighty you! You are the greatest, great honor and tribute. We praise mighty you. How many times would it have to burp that out before you would say, oh my God, what did I do? This was the worst idea ever. Oh, God does not want us to worship him. He wants us to reach up to him, to acknowledge him, to embrace him, to accept him as our Father, and to respect him as such. My relationship with God is tremendous respect, total admiration, yet no fear, no worship, no bowing down. And I have too much respect for him as a father, and as a friend, and as a colleague, to treat him any other way. Now, I'm going to read the rest of this. We're going to then conclude this program and prepare for this evening show, which is now less than an hour from now. Therefore, it will not be by an appearance or vision seen with his eyes that he will decide, and also it will not be by hearsay heard with his ears that he will make judgments and prove his arguments. He will exercise good judgment by seeking to be accurate, honest, and forthright with regard to opening the doorway for the discerning. He will provide proof using sound arguments, with everything laid out in the open, doing so fairly, on behalf of the sincere who are seeking straightforward answers of the land. Now, there's even more to it. And we're going to go right back to this when we do this program tomorrow on the Shabbat. We're going to share this with you sometime in the late morning of the Shabbat. And this is, again, extraordinary that God would pick this man, his choder. He would explain exactly where he's coming from and what he's going to achieve with him, and then tell us he's going to give him 7 spirits. And then as a result of that, this is what they're going to achieve together. And it is unlike anything that is presented anywhere else in the Torah and prophets. And I want you to be able to benefit from it. So we will resume here tomorrow at an earlier time. And thank you so much for listening. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. I am that choder. My name is Craig Winn. And this has been the YAHOWAH Blog.